students are joining and leaving almost immediately. Is there a problem?
A lot of them might have network issues, so probably they'll be joining back again. All right, so I think we can start. Welcome everyone, faculty, students, staff, and other guests who have joined us this evening. A very, very warm welcome for the second PechaKucha event that we are doing at NIFT Bangalore. Today, you join us all online to hear some of the best design professionals come together and deliberate on a topic that I think should be interesting for everyone, which is gender fluid design. Gender fluidity is a concept often referred to as a contemporary design practice. We have heard many people talk about it as if it's a new practice, where the boundaries of gender are usually blurred and design unifies a society into a non-binary and a complete entity. We have moved much beyond the old adage where we used to say pink is for girls and blue is for boys. Embracing the concept of colors, not just colors, but also probably forms and functions, being able to define an individual rather than a gender. However, is this as simple as it sounds? Are these practices really contemporary? Or are we today revisiting a traditional mindset which had been lost in our social economic discourse? As a designer, what's the role a designer plays in this inclusivity? And then really the big question in terms of what really is gender fluid design. This and many more questions are put forth and answered by our experts today, all of whom come from varied facets of design. Their narrative today will be in the short and crisp PechaKucha format, the Japanese term for Chit, where each speaker presents 20 slides with images to guide them through the narration and spending not more than 20 seconds on every slide. This makes it a power-packed 7-minute presentation where they tell their thoughts through powerful visuals. On behalf of the entire design fraternity at NIFT Bangalore, I welcome you all to this evening and to our online forum on gender fluid design. We begin with our first speaker. I request everyone to kindly put themselves on mute. While I have the honor and the pleasure of inviting the first speaker for today, Mr. Prasad Vidappa, a name that spells style and fashion. He's one of India's most well-known fashion stylists and choreographer, the man behind various high-profile events like the India Men's Fashion Week, the Colombo Fashion Week, the Kingfisher Fashion Awards, and the Mega Model Hunt. Mr. Vidappa has often delved into the pages of history to discover gender fluid fashion. We welcome him online and invite him to share his thoughts with us. Mr. Vidappa, over to you. Just give us a minute while we share his presentation on screen. May I remind all the people in the audience to kindly keep the mic on mute. Thank you so much and enjoy the first speaker of today. Mr. Prasad, you may begin. Mr. Prasad, are you with us? We can begin today.
Ma'am, he is on mute.
Yeah, just checking. Mr. Prasad, if you can hear us.
Can you see? You,
Hi. I guess you're on mute because you're not able to hear you. Yes, we can see you, but we are not able to hear you. Please unmute yourself and we can begin. There seems to be some
hello.
Yeah, there we can see you now. So if you're ready to begin, Mr. Prasad, we can start with your presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Take a fluidity and to try and define what the term really means to us. In the old days, we called it Unisex. Now there is fluidity. See, the narration is a manifestation.
Mr. Prasad, unfortunately, I think we're not able to hear you clearly. Your voice is not audible. There's a lot of breakage. Maybe ask the next speaker if probably we can start with Ritu and then we can come back to Mr. Prasad with a path when his mic and your audio is restored. So Ritu, if it's okay, we can continue with you and then come back to Mr. Prasad.
There's no backing up now, is there?
Absolutely not. Okay, all right. So I take the pleasure of introducing Ms. Ritu today. Ms. Ritu Arya is the creative director, Razzle Dazzle Pickle. She's also a proud alumna of NIFT Bangalore, and true to her vision of being a multisensory artist, she also co-runs a music company by the name of Drum and Bass India. She also delves into photography, with her work revolving around human emotions, memories, trauma, empty space, and such. Welcome aboard and kindly take stage for sharing your thoughts with us. Over to you, Ritu.
Thank you. And it's so nice to see Mohan sir, Sanjeev sir, and everybody else I can't recognize because maybe I'm too old to remember faces, but hi. So can we start my presentation, please? Thank you, Miss Monica. Okay, I thought we were going full screen. Okay, so we can just go to the first slide maybe, or second one is fine. Second one is fine too, yeah. Shall I start?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So, I mean, all of us are aware that we're here to discuss gender fluid design as a concept, or it could be in any context, I'm guessing. So the very first slide here that I've put is because this image sort of shows how deeply this stereotyping is instilled that even people like us, let's say you and I, people who are all aware about the gender spectrum, could for a second just like be like, okay, that's a man and this is a woman, you know? So this image clearly portrays how deeply rooted this concept is. And but that's the entire, I mean, unless I look at my own legs, I'm sure this one is always a man, you know, like, and then nowadays, finally things are changing and people are like breaking the norms. But this concept, like I think Mr. Prasad's presentation also had a reference to start with, he had a reference of the Hindu mythology, which I'll get to later. And yeah, I think we can move to the next one. This was just to show the deeply instilled concept. Sure. Okay, so given that now I'm the first one, I should ideally break down a few terms. I'm sure everybody knows, but for the people who don't know, also for my revision. So often people confuse with these terms. I am still learning a lot about this entire LGBTQIA plus community, but so sex is what's biologically assigned to you, right? Like a girl or a boy or intersex. Gender identity is what's constructed. It's sort of something that's fed to you by society. You're brought up as a girl or a boy. Gender expression is how you choose to communicate through your clothes or jewelry or how you express it, basically. And gender orientation is who are you attracted to. Yeah, so that's gender orientation. So these four terms are nowhere overlap. They're like very different. They could also in later slides we'll discuss how they could somehow overlap in bunch of cases, but we must understand the different meanings of these four terms. Yeah. Now I've put these 5 images here, and these 5 people here are probably the top few faces of androgynous models across the world. And the idea of putting these images here is because like I said, I think how we can define gender fluidity or gender identity is it's all an idea. It's open to interpretation, basically. So I'm pretty sure if you don't know who these people are, I don't think I could also tell who is biologically inclined towards what and whose orientation is what, who identifies themselves as what. But so anyway, I think we've seen the trend quite pick up really well, which is internationally, at least, it's become almost like a norm where androgynous models have taken over the ramp, and also even in lifestyle ads and everything else. So I think I don't want to go through every model's name here, but I think the first one happens to be a female. The second one is also a female. The third one is a trans boy, fourth one. And then we also have a gender fluid male model there. So you get the idea of me putting those 5 pictures together. Yeah, we can go ahead. It's fine. You'll tell me if I'm talking too fast, or somebody should unmute and tell me if I'm like, it's not making
sense. You're going perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So now this is a thing that we very often hear people saying, it's just a phase, like when there's a young girl or a young boy who doesn't feel like himself. And these images here prove for the nth time that this is not a new concept. It's not at all a new concept. People need to stop singing that song. Neither is it an influence from their friends or girlfriends and boyfriends. So these images here, quick look at these. The very first one happens to be a figurine found during, I can't remember the period, I'm sorry, but then it's from Ecuador. And how over here you can see there's both male and female features here. And also the lady who's talking about these figurines that she's been studying also mentions how these characteristics from the olden figurines and artifacts have been ignored in today's media or even academia, because it's a sign of the toxic patriarchal society that we live in today, that they choose to ignore the third gender and other genders from the past as well, so that it sort of doesn't become the norm ever. You all know about toxic patriarchy, so I don't have to delve into that. The second image happens to be a god called Pan from Greek mythology, the one on the right-hand side. He's been seen chasing men and women equally, and so he happens to be pansexual. A reference again. The third image is a very interesting one. Japan, they recently did this print exhibition called Third Gender. It's not recent, it's been a few years, I'm sorry. And over there, the prime focus somehow remains to be this third gender there called Wakashu. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. It's about young boys dressing up as females, and also same sex activities or marriages and engagement. Clear reference again. This is age old. The fourth one happens to be a painting. I think it's by a Spanish painter, but the painting's name is The Bearded Lady. Now the one in the front is the mother, and it's very symbolic. So there's a bunch of theories about it. So I think the lady here is maybe the sole breadwinner of the family, and so the beard sort of shows her strength and manliness. It's also the way she's very tightly holding the baby, and also how she's the same height as the husband. So this is, again, like the representation of them being equal is being done by the beard, but a lady in beard. So that's there again. And the fifth one, I think Mr. Prasad Vidappa was discussing that, Ardhanareshwari, which is a perfect blend of Lord Shiva and Parvati. Yeah, I think I'm done with this one. So yeah, so my point, so the last slide also tells us that, like I mentioned, especially in the Indian society, I can't speak for other countries because I don't live there, but we hear people saying, it's Western influence. So like kids are watching TV and MTV and all that jazz. At least that's what I would listen to when I was growing up. Everything was blamed on the phone and TV, but it's quite strange, and it's very funny and ironical that a country which has a mythology with the maximum or a bunch of gods and characters that have been trans or gays, trans and did I repeat that? Sorry, yeah. So like let me give an example, which is Lord Ayyappa. Then we have Shikandi, another character in Mahabharata, who was born a girl but was brought up and felt like a boy. So what I'm trying to say is, this society, I think we just too hypocritical. But this concept has been there even in Khajuraho. These the wall sculptures, you can see an existence of same-sex engagements and people with multiple gender orientations. That was the point of the last slide. I think I'm taking more than 20 seconds each. Somebody should keep a track.
Yes, I was about to tell you that, but I was getting in the narrative. So just
I've taken a lot of time to put together these images. Okay, so somebody
just a little faster.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, so these two images, these two again have a reference of people from the art, music, fashion industry. Frida Kahlo, Kurt Cobain, Prince. Everybody here who's been breaking these norms since ages. Frida was clearly known to be a gender fluid person. We can move on. Just a few examples how they've been around for a while. This is again Inspire. We must stop here for a second because on the left-hand side is a very lovely person here, Anjali Lama, the first transgender model to walk the ramp in India. She's from Nepal. The second one happens to be Durga Gode, an open gender fluid person, an artist. And then we have Jim Saab just donning a floral dress because now we're trying to break the stereotypes. And then we have Harry Styles, which I'm sure everybody has seen these pictures. That's Ruby Rose and that's Prince. And Prince was always known to wear those pink socks, by the way, very feminine. We can move ahead now. So now what I did is, because again, I had to keep somehow I thought this whole thing would become very inclined towards clothing and fashion. So I thought I would pick a few things from lifestyle as well. So the very first one happens to be a designer I can't remember the name of, and Nitya ma'am is rushing me, so I can't even look for it, who makes these furnitures, and they are said to be androgynous. You can tell by the looks of it. Again, you have some jewelry brands, how the male and the female can wear the same jewelry. If you go a little, you can move a little further. Thank you. The one on the left is toys for unisex, agendered toys by Pottery Barn, which was introduced recently. And then we also have the very first Hublot. Hublot is the brand, I think, if I'm pronouncing it right, the very first unisex / androgynous watch that was introduced. Yep, we can move now. Now, a very quick glance at this. I've written here, what about equality? Because generally it's the other gender, weaker sex like us talking about this. But in somehow we must also point out the fact that in gender fluidity and the wider umbrella, men are still frowned upon if they choose to wear some other silhouettes. But women from back in the day when Chanel introduced the pantsuit for women. Even now, maybe they're frowned upon, or maybe some people don't appreciate it, but then it still somehow manages to pass. But if a man wears a feminine silhouette, it still hasn't reached where it should be. So there's no equality here, I feel. And this is an example from last year's 2019's Oscar. We can move forward now. Billy Porter and Amy Poehler. So I write here a step ahead because on the right, two pictures are Tilda Swinton. I'm sure most of us know her. These pictures have been taken by Tim Walker, and this is like in 2003. So androgynous characters and models and humans and people have been around for a while, and they've been inspiring everybody else to move forward. So us discussing this now sort of feels like we're failing them. And on the left as well, you have a brand, The Row, which has been doing these fluid silhouettes for the longest time, both for men and women as well. Yeah. Yep. Now, I don't know who mentioned this in the beginning. Yes, Nidya ma'am did something about catching up with the past sort of thing. So this, again, my point here is because mythology, everybody around has been, has known of this for the longest time. And somehow, again, like 2018, Lakme did this section called Gender Bender. They had like 4 labels, Chola, Anam, and Bobo, and something else I can't remember the name of. And we had men wearing saris or fluid silhouettes, unstructured silhouettes. Lama would know better, I'm guessing. But the point is, it's like I said, it's a shame. We just like sort of trying to go back to square one and then begin our journey again. So this is finally us catching up in terms of fashion in the country compared to at least international situation. That's it. Yeah, we can move to the next one. Yep, this is my favorite slide. So now, I don't think, so this one is an agency that recently started. It was started by Nikhil, somebody who's again a very genuine, nice, talented human being, stylist, and her model friend, Smita. Now, the unique thing about this agency is that they have completely redesigned or redefined how usually we perceive Indian models. The reason being, because you know how dusky people do really well outside, like you would walk for all the multiple international brands, but then India, you only want like a typical sort of picture that we have in mind. So that led them to open this agency, and they have a bunch of gorgeous people. Also, they're also focusing on the gender part. So you have male, female, and you also have trans. Anjali is again managed by them. The one that we're looking at here is Tarun, who by the agency also works as a male model and also as a female model. I think we can move to the next one. Then we have other people from, and then this Vogue slide needs to be highlighted again, because the girl that you see, whose face you can see clearly, is Anjali. She's from the same agency again. And a cover like this, that's her partner with her. A cover like this a few years ago or until recently also wouldn't have been imagined. So this is another achievement. And so this agency has been doing wonderful work. That's Smita and Nikhil on the side. And I've had a bunch of discussion with him about this topic, but then I'm pretty sure I don't have time to discuss it anymore. So we'll move to the next slide. I'm giving like some sort of free comical entertainment as well, am I not? So now this is just a comparison between then and now again in mainstream media. So the one on the right, I don't know how many of us know about it, because even I didn't know until 2 days ago. Bombay Dost was a magazine that was started in, okay, I can't remember. It was started by the journalist Ravi, one second. It has to be somewhere here. Yeah.
Ashok Rao Kavi.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, Ashok Rao Kavi.
Yeah. So in 1990, and it was the first LGBTQ magazine of India. And then on the left is a recent, not very recent, but a rather recent picture by Tarun Khiwal during his Harper Bazaar's
Ritu, I have to rush you a little bit.
Yeah,
because,
let's go.
Yes.
Androgyny as self-expression. We have gone through this. Androgyny, quick point. It could be a character, it could be a gender, it could also be just a representation and expression. It doesn't have to overlap. It could also overlap. So, yep. And now what I've done here is, growing up, I've heard this a bunch of times, I don't know, that I look like a boy at times, and I take it as a compliment. It just doesn't at all offend me. And when I was called for this, I somehow started connecting the dots, and I felt this need to share my pictures where I completely, the picture here, the third picture, which is a super close-up, is a picture from 2013, the oldest picture, where people were, I got a bunch of messages saying, oh, I thought it was a guy. And then we can move on. So then we have at the bottom corner, we have Lama's garment, which I wore for graduation. Again, you can see how brilliant she's always been with these silhouettes. And then we have a bunch of other pictures from different shoots, where I feel there's a bit of androgynous feel to the images on my face. There's a bunch of them to go through. All different hair phases and expressions, and and over here I've put these three images together, especially because these are the recent ones, but the top three I specifically want to highlight because, again, the same hairstyle, but then how characters are all very different in these, I don't have to get into the emotional part of it. We can move ahead. Yay, we are okay. Final. Nitya ma'am, you should be happy now. Okay, so mediums. I completely ruined the concept of PechaKucha, I know. But okay, so mediums, this is just an example for all the people to know and understand that gender fluidity or the concept or these terms aren't just related to fashion and clothing and glamour side of things, So I've just picked up people and their work, different mediums. So the second one is a sculpture by Jean Arp, and the second one is Ray Caesar, who somehow paints a reflection of him. So basically, it's all his alter ego as a gender fluid person that he paints. Then we have Sasha, a drag queen, and we know Bowie. And then the very fifth one is Alok Menon, who's been, I think everybody, all of us know him here, is a writer, performer, an activist, and gender, I think non-binary person, yeah. And so that the idea here was, again, to share a bunch of mediums. And then I thought it would be nice to end on the note. I know all of us are educated here, but then we must keep reminding each other how to be nice to other people. So I've just put a few things like, how we're not supposed to make assumptions. We have to use inclusive language. We have to learn the pronouns, simple things that we can all do to just make it all easy for all the other genders in the society. That's all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ritu. I know that we kind of overstepped time a little bit, but still a very, very powerful presentation. That was lovely. Thank you so much for sharing it with us today. We would now call upon Mr. Prasad, I think, who's ready with this presentation. Mr. Prasad, we couldn't hear because earlier we had a little connectivity issue, but now we are on and we can begin with you. Thank you so much.
That was a very interesting presentation we just went through. Congratulations. It was very, very nice. I have a lot of the same things to say, really. In my first slide, if you could just get the slides on, please.
Yes, they're just coming up. Yeah, 1 second.
I think that
1 second, 1 second.
That's not mine.
Just getting that.
That's not mine.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Just a second, please. Yes.
There you are.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about gender fluidity through the ages and say that somehow we've taken a piece of cloth, we've called it the dhoti, we've called it the sari. I think it's simply the most gender fluid garment ever. An unstructured length of fabric has the possibility to become 1,000 myriad drapes. And I found that very interesting. And I wanted to show how the dhoti autumn becoming a sari. And it was very interesting to find that this kind of dressing was quite widely accepted. And like the earlier speaker also had mentioned about the temple sculptures of Khajuraho and other places where you see gender fluidity at its very best. Can I go to the next slide, please? And look, the Greeks also used a system of draping that was, I think in a way, there are definite ways of wearing men's drapes as opposed to women's drapes. In India, we drape a fabric and leave the chest bare, and that's the dhoti. And then you drape it all over the body and it becomes the sari. And to the next slide, please. You see, the sari is like the most versatile of garments. And in this lineup at some fashion show of mine, you can see a range of dhotis and saris, all structured from the same kind of fabric and from the same designer. But it was just the way of draping that created a gender separation as such. But that brings me to a very important question. Go to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? You see, is it enough to just wear a sari and say it's gender fluid when a man wears it? I don't think so. For young designers from NIFT especially, I think gender fluid clothing has to be specially designed. It's not just picking up a random woman's garment and making a man wear it, or picking up a sari and making a man wear it again, or putting a woman in a blazer and tie and saying this is gender fluidity. I don't think that's really the correct answer to it at all. To me, gender fluidity is something more specific. It has to be the kind of like a design and wraps. And I always felt that men could wear them just as easily. They were designed with no particular sex in mind, but they became something to be by everyone. So I think we have to make the differentiation between cross-dressing, which is when men wear women's clothes and women wear men's clothes. And that's, to me, really not androgyny at all. Can I go to the next slide, please? Monica. So you take a look at what's been happening over here. Zayn Malik and Gigi Hadid are brand ambassadors for gender fluidity. They wear clothes that look very similar to each other, and maybe you could even swap them around and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But the thing is that men's and women's bodies are structured differently. A woman wearing a jacket, a man's jacket, is going to have her breasts flattened completely. You know, it's just sort of, it doesn't seem to fit very well, in my opinion, that you have to cut clothes separately, that even if you want a woman to wear a man's suit, it's got to be cut differently from the way you cut a man's suit. You've got to make allowance for darting and, you know, for nipping in the waist maybe, or to give it a more feminine shape. But there are these, I think, you know, sort of clear-cut boundaries between men's and clothing and women's clothing. And it's only the designer who understands both and is able to fuse the two together to create a new piece is what I would call gender fluidity. To the next slide, please. You take a look at Ranveer Kapoor over here and Lakshmi Rana in the very next photograph wearing a design by Payal Pratap Singh. I mean, it's basically the same components, but the way it's worn tends to show that this is a masculine outfit and this is a feminine outfit. But there is a lot of blurring in the whole thing. And I think that's very interesting to look at the kind of clothes that Ranveer especially wears, because he's truly one of India's big gender benders. And he's always wearing clothes that somehow seem to have been designed for someone else. And he found it on the rack somewhere and found it interesting and decided to try it on and then made his own fashion statement. Suppose whichever sex you're thinking of and try it on, and you know, you upscale it and make it your own very. But I'm still waiting for the designer who will create something that is truly gender fluid, that is something that can come off the rack without to make any adjustments. Next slide, please. Could we have the next slide, Monica?
Yes.
Here you take a look at, you know, looks that may not always be flattering. In the top photograph, you take the second boy who's been dressed in some kind of a blouse, which I think sometimes designers are doing it for shock value. doing it for shock effect. And you're not really going to see these styles take off on the high street, or many people embrace the styling because it is difficult to get away with. So I think that maybe gender fluidity has its own definitions, its own boundaries, maybe. And I think that just the easy solution of saying, I've designed this frock for a girl, but I think it's going to look equally well on a man, and you stuff the male model into something like that, that doesn't really work for me. Our next slide, please. You take a look at, again, gender fluid brand offerings, sweaters worn by both men and women. I mean, my wife wears a lot of my sweaters. It's something that she finds very comfortable, but I don't think she's trying to make any kind of a statement about gender fluidity. It's really more about practical an ease of wearing and the size that she finds very comfortable to wear. So where does one actually define gender fluidity? Is it something that has to be designed for the third sex, or designed on the spectrum for a different level of, sort of male, female kind of a proportion that we tend to work with? Like maybe man would want to wear gender fluid. It's not too feminine, but is still gender fluid. And yet another man would choose to wear something that is extremely feminine. So I think there's a gray scale over there that we need to explore and understand, whom are we making these clothes for? The next slide, please. This is a designer called Tom Brown, who's creating a huge sensation by designing executive wear that is gender fluid, and putting men in sort of executive skirts and more feminine looks like blazers, and putting the men in, in sort of very, very different looks. I thought it's very interesting, but will it fly? I'm sure there will be people who buy into it, but does it have the potential to become a mass movement? I don't think so. Our next slide, please. This is what some young Indian designers and influencers experimenting with gender identity have been doing. I find that second picture extremely interesting because it looks like something that can be worn by a woman just as easily. And I find that that's something that defines gender fluidity, has to be something that appeals across the board to all sexes. You should be able to have a customer who's a man willing to wear it with a lot of pride, and find a woman who's willing to wear it in a sexier way maybe, or make it her own in some different kind of way. The next slide, please. Again, a few examples of gender fluidity. Some of them just taking women's clothes and making it their own. Some of them making a deliberate attempt to create a garment that has absolutely no reference points to gender. And I think that's very interesting when you do that. And I would encourage young designers to look at that option, not to just take the woman's garment and throw it into the ring and say, oh, a man can wear it, so therefore it's a men's garment too. I think you need to take a lot more trouble with it in the construction, in the way it drapes, in the way it's cut, to make true of gender. Next slide, please. Here again, you can take a look at Off-White, which is one of the great companies making gender fluid clothing. And I think a lot of you should go online and check off the collection of Off-White, because there they have no differentiation between the men's and women's departments. It's everywhere you... I'm so sorry. Coming call. And this is Balenciaga, or the next slide, please. I find that very interesting, that not just high street brands, but couture brands also can look at this aspect of creating gender fluid dressing. The next slide, please. Here is the gender spectrum for any of you who are interested in looking at this gray scale of what male and female are generally done up as, and then what gender fluid means. It's an interesting enough chart. So I leave you with these thoughts, and thank you so much for having me on this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prasad. I think that kind of had an entire array of gender fluid fashion, right down from where we started to probably where we are, and of course, looking at a lot of future. Thank you so much for that lovely, lovely presentation. It's now my pleasure to call upon our next speaker, Ms. Tanushri Saha, who's a music professional with Broadcast Music Incorporated, wherein she explores music as a medium of expression and as something, in her own words, that satiates the soul. A design graduate from NIFT and then from NID, Tanushri brings forth a rich experience with strategic design management for retail and combines it with her love for sound design in delving deep into multisensory design. It's not a surprise that now we look forward very, very keenly to listen to her talk about an inclusive design experience. Over to you, Tanushri.
Ma'am, will you be able to also share my presentation like that? Do you have it?
Yes, I think we should be able to do that. Or if you're more comfortable doing it yourself, you can.
I think if you do it, it's even better. Yes, it's already here.
So we'll do that. Yes.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to quickly start. I am not going to take too much time. So I'm here to talk about gender fluidity and in music, of course, and also in the field of design, how we've seen it. The second slide, please. So now what is this gender fluidity that we're talking about all the time? To me, it is just a concept of not having gender as a fixed point, but rather as a fluid characteristic that can change at any point in somebody's life. And the old school belief that gender has only two poles and just two binaries, like a male and a female, or maybe another third category that has evolved over time, has become very redundant and it needs to change. It has slowly already been changing. So that's where we anchor ourselves at. Now, why is it very important is because, first of all, it is about now and also about the near future. Like a lot of people have said that it's already been happening a lot in the Western countries. We've been seeing so much happening in our country as well. So it's not even in the near future so much. It's very much here. It's very much with us, and we need to be ready with that. We need to be ready while we are designing our products, because the generation that is coming up, the Gen Z generation, which are called the centennials after the millennials, they are definitely going to tear up the binary. They are not here to look at things as men and women. And those people who are slowly going to mature up and become adults soon, for them that we are designing. So we need to catch up with their race. We need to catch up with their time. So it's about the non-binary thing. The third slide, please. Now, talking about gender fluidity in music a little bit. Now, why we need to also see gender fluidity is coming where all in different industries is because now music is a very powerful medium of communication. It is something that appeals to a very large mass. It has the power, the potential to reach a lot of people, which is why we need to have a lot of responsibility. We have a lot of responsibility as musicians also to give the right kind of messaging, because it can reach so many people. And it is the immediate form of communication, right? The form of expression right after talking. Like, whenever we feel something, most of the time people start singing songs. I mean, there is COVID-19 happening and people are making songs about COVID-19. There is a natural calamity happening. People are talking about that. People are going to make a song about anything. It is used in politics. It is used in, for women empowerment, for say the wildfires in Amazon or anything. So music is where we see any kind of new change happening very fast, more than other industries. Other industries slowly they catch up, but in music we see it immediately. So which is why we're seeing a lot of gender fluidity in music already, from international scene as well as the Indian scene. Yeah, the next slide, please. So this is a music video that we had come up with. It's called the Vogue Again. Vogue Again is basically, we are treating it as the sequel of Madonna's Vogue, which had come out in the 80s. And here the whole purpose and my mission was to spread awareness on gender fluidity. The YouTube link is also right there underneath in the slide. Later on, you guys can check out that video as well. It's there on YouTube. So the whole thing was to spread, I mean, there is some amount of awareness in India, but not so much. People still frown upon so much in Bangalore itself. So I was like, okay, no, let's make something amazing and teach people about it, spread some awareness about it. So I got this person who is actually not queer. He's a straight person, but a very amazing dancer who taught me the whole dance form of voguing. Voguing is something which had started again in the 70s and the 80s in these ballrooms back in the 80s. In different places in New York and in France, in Europe as well. And from there it came, and now of course everybody is embracing it very well. But back then they had to really struggle to bring it out in their spaces, in their safe spaces. Ballrooms were their safe spaces where people could come up and do whatever they want to, be whatever they want to, without having the fear of getting thrashed, having the fear of getting abused and stuff. So from there the voguing scene had started, and I was using the Vogue dance form in this music video. This person on the left that you see, his name is Mr. Siddharth, and he was absolutely okay about trying out something new for the first time. And I was like, I'm going to dress you up like a woman. Are you going to be okay? And he's like, okay, I'm going to be fine. I want to try this out and see how it's going to be, because of course it's for a purpose, it's for an objective. So let me try it. And although he's straight, but he went through it all about 100%, and he taught me the whole thing, and the whole project came out very well. So that's how we are also exploring the fluidity a little bit. The next slide, please. So now these are a lot of people who have come out in the international scene in the last 3 to 4 years, barely. Why I'm showing you all these names like Miley Cyrus and Jaden Smith and all these people, of course, there have been a lot of people coming out of their closets and talking about this in the past as well. But right now, in the last 3 to 4 years, it has happened very quickly. Like too many people are coming out, like Ellen Page has changed her name to Elliot Page, she's a he now. And so many things have happened very fast in the last year, 2020, 2019, that we now have to embrace the change in our work, in our environment, in our society also, because we see that it's happening very quick. The whole shift is happening very quick, and you're going to see it a lot more in the upcoming years. The next slide, please. Now, if we're talking about gender fluidity in design, what it is and what it is not. It is not simply a trend or a fad. It is not a marketing gimmick for brands. It is not a brand enhancing idea that, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to stand out for a while. I'm going to reach out to a certain amount of demographics, and then I'm going to, do well in my particular product category. No, it's not that. It is a movement. It is a very serious movement, which has started from a long time. And now we have to also pitch in however measures we can. Being designers, we also have to join the movement in whatever possible, little possible way. It is a moral and a business imperative. It is a sort of like you need to have kind of a thing. It's a moral thing, it's a business thing, and it's time to create with fluidity and for gender fluidity. It's for and with together. The next slide, please. Now, so in order to be, for designers, of course, who are solely into design, when they are trying to create something for products and for collections, what do you need to do in order to be gender neutral? You need to have the knowledge for the ever-growing gender spectrum. Now, the LGBTQIA+, every year, another letter is getting added into that whole thing, because we are getting new names, we are getting new expressions, people are understanding themselves more. There's a lot of self-understanding every year. And that is why these initials are getting added every time. So knowing the growing gender spectrum, embracing the gender spectrum fully from your heart, and practicing inclusivity in your design. And of course, applying universal design principles when you're coming up with any kind of design, when you're doing that, keeping that in mind, basically, because things are not binary anymore. Things are not black and white anymore, or zeros and ones anymore. Okay, and now if you do that, what will happen? You're definitely going to widen your reach. As a brand, you're going to widen your reach. All the things that we're not appealing to certain people are going to appeal to a lot more people. So that way, of course, you're going to do well as a brand, stay relevant and ahead of the curve, because you definitely want to stay relevant. You do not want to become obsolete, and be walking with the generations and not past them. Support the community changes. These are community changes that are happening not in your town, but all over the globe. So become global, have the support, have the heart and the courage to support these things, and to, of course, lead and to inspire the competition, your competition. A lot of people might not be thinking like that. So you need to lead and you need to inspire a lot of other people who then will follow you onto your shoes, follow your footsteps, and also become inclusive, people who are not doing it right away. The next slide, please. Yeah, so these are some of the examples of some brands about what they are doing, like greeting cards at Etsy. They are coming up with these neutral greeting cards where colors are different. And then there are apparel, how it is designed. These are just some examples. Now, there is also this gingerbread man that was there, the typical gingerbread. He's a gingerbread person now. The brand has purposefully changed gingerbread man into gingerbread person, because everybody is understanding this whole thing, and brands are becoming more aware, more open to such stuff. The bottle, the packaging, how packaging has also become very neutral because we want to appeal to everybody. The band on the bottom left, that is the official, these are the official colors, by the way. If you go a little down, ma'am, slightly, what is written over there? So yeah, okay. Anyway, so I was talking about the wristband. These are the colors of the official gender fluidity, gender neutrality. So if you're wearing these colors, you're automatically shown as a support. You're automatically known as somebody who's supporting this. Now, the next slide is about these dolls. So Mattel Fashion, the doll design company, has already introduced world's first gender neutral doll in 2020, creating a line for children, because these are the formative years of a child is very important when they are learning about themselves, when they are exploring the whole society, the things around them, which is when you can teach them clearly. So there was a lot of also criticism about how Barbie dolls are built, how they are extremely feminine, and it's not healthy in a way how girls look at themselves, how they come up with a negative understanding about their bodies. So which is why some brands have gone an extra mile and changed that. Now companies are reorienting their products for early education of children, because toys are a reflection of our culture, right? So celebration of positive impact in the form of inclusivity. And that is something some brands are doing. And yeah, we can go to the next slide. So these are some brands. I was just reading online, and I found out a lot of brands, from Zara to the new age brands like Bode. Bode is an international apparel brand, Daily Paper. These brands have come up with their gender neutral collections specifically for some people, but then some brands like Daily Paper and Bode and non-gender specific, they are completely into this only. They have started their work from scratch just for this alone, solely, not like a separate collection. But so that's what you come to know, that every brand, mostly internationally, they're all coming up with their collections so that they do not want to exclude anybody. They all want to be inclusive. They want everybody to feel safe, and that is very essential. I mean, that is happening at a very global scale already, like all of us anyway know it. And the next slide, please. So coming back to gender fluidity while creating music, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of what's happening. There is this song called Am I a Girl by Poppy. The link is there below. You can check out the YouTube link as well. So how do you become gender fluid also while creating music? Is by having first an intention. The intention, what is your intention? To be toxic, to show toxic masculinity, to show feeble feminism, to show a caring thing, to be a warrior, or to be what? What is your intention to be? So here the intention maybe was to be inclusive, picking the theme with very caution, careful use of words. Here the song lyrics, if you go and Google up, you'll understand how they have made everybody comfortable by asking questions to herself only. Am I a girl? Am I a boy? Am I this? Am I that? Am I what? And these questions are not just hers alone. These questions are of a lot of people who constantly struggle with understanding what's going on, especially in not metros, in tier 2, tier 3 cities where people feel differently, but they cannot speak about it. They are in their own zone, but they constantly question themselves. So a lot of people like that will relate to it. That is the idea, to relate with people who feel fluid. How do you do that? By writing the lyrics. Lyrics is one point over here that I want to focus, that how you can be gender fluid while creating the music. To, of course, by doing that, she's bringing in a new idea forward. A lot of people who don't have this idea, lot of people will get that idea, and you're also educating, informing, and spreading awareness to a lot of people who are anyway her fans, anyway listening. A lot of people who are, say, not into neutrality will generally develop respect for people who are neutral by understanding what all things go into someone's mind, what all problems somebody goes through, all that. Unless we go and sit in someone's shoes, we don't understand somebody else's problems. So that is why we sometimes have to leave everything and really converse with people and understand what they're going through. That's when maybe we become a little compassionate. Then yeah, please, the next slide. So yeah, and another way of creating fluidity is by creating fluid visuals which are not binary, visuals which are for everybody, by keeping it very simple, appealing yet. So one example was Beethoven for Elise. This is a animation abstract music video, of course, without any faces, without showing anybody's face, but through animation, through lights, through colors, through fluid objects, and it will of course appeal to people, and the whole message is still coming out, and everybody is happy. that is there. That is one way of creating it. So here basically I'm trying to talk about when you don't have the lyrics, you do not have the music in place, maybe you show it with visuals because you're always creating a video for it. So through the video also you can show support. Then the next slide, please. So I'm actually coming down to my last two slides, and I was getting pretty quick. I wrapped it up. So these are some links that I have gone through, I've read, I've understood. These are online articles that children can also look through for some information that they might find relevant information that will really help them. And yes, I request ma'am and the other faculties to share it with the students so that they can also receive the knowledge. And then I think I'm on to my last slide maybe. Okay, one last slide before this. Yes, can we have the next slide? Yeah, so a little food for thought before I end this. I want people to think as to what is going on. Which way is this world heading? Which way is the world heading? Not like COVID ho gaya, are kahan ja rahe, kahan mar rahe, waisa nahi. Which way is the world heading towards fluidity, gender fluidity? Why? Which way is it going? And why is this gradual unification happening? There is a unification happening, right? Now everybody is becoming either like too many genders, like plus plus plus, or it's becoming like one. Man and women are becoming one. Why is this unification happening? This slowly that is happening. We are not making it. You are not doing it. I am not doing it on purpose. But slowly we see that the whole world is getting unified. Why is this happening? Think about it. Was there an issue with the existing binary gender system? Maybe that is why it is happening. Was there an issue? Just think about it. Were there issues when men were just men, women were just women? That is why people decided that no, things are going to change now slowly, and even their bodies started talking. Their bodies are also talking, so that this whole thing happens genuinely and not at the surface level. Now, if tomorrow the whole world identifies as gender fluid, each and every one of us in the whole world, how do you imagine this world? How do you see this world? How will you design for that world then? Because maybe it's going to become like that slowly. So imagine that, how that world is going to be. And as designers, as us, we also have huge responsibilities. So how can we fix gender related problems like gender inequality, etc., hajar problems that we have due to gender, strict genders? How can we fix those by design? We do not have to look at gender, problems that are far away from us. Look at small problems that you're facing every day in your life. After you wake up every day in the morning, from then to while you're meeting your people, your friends, when you go back to your work, when you come back home, what all problems that you see because of this fixed gender system that we have in our country, in our world, what all problems do you see? See if you can fix those by your design work, by your design principles. That is there. And yeah, I think we're on to our last slide now, the next slide. So yeah, that was all the presentation. I tried to keep it as crisp as possible. I am Tanushree Shaha. I am Shishri in the social media, Insta, YouTube, and FB. You'll find me as Shishri. And thank you so much for having me. I really hope you got some kind of relevant information from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tanushri. That was really a gender fluid presentation, looking at it as a movement. We covered right down from toys to gingerbread biscuits to clothing and fashion and then music. That was a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now welcome our next speaker, Ms. Priyanka Lama, or Pella, as she has been known in the NIF fraternity, who's an alumna from NIFT Bangalore Fashion Design. And she's already made waves in the fashion industry, winner of the International Fashion Showcase 2017 Country Award at the London Fashion Week, representing India through the International Fashion Showcase at the Somerset House, and invited by Le Corne Raymond for a special project using Dami fiber, which is exhibited at the French consulate. Ms. Priyanka dons many, many hats in her total Uberpur avatar. Welcome, Priyanka. Share your thoughts with us, please.
Thank you so much for having me, ma'am.
You would like us to share your presentation,
Yes.
or would you like to do it
ma'am.
yourself? Okay.
Yes.
So we're on.
Am I audible? Yeah. The first page. Yeah. So a very good evening to each and everyone present here today. I'm sure you guys have really taken out time from your busy schedule to be here and to discuss a very disruptive idea or a disruptive thinking process, which is gender fluid design. Gender fluidity is, of course, like a very talked about topic today because of, I think, like how Tanushri said, it's a movement, it's a revolution where, and it all comes from the younger generation, and that's Gen Z. It's like taking an industry to a whole next generation, making them become the new normal, making them like become or accept what it is. Because I think we have obviously, like we're millennials and there are like so many, obviously, I mean, from all ages, all age groups. I think over time, obviously there is, you know, it has always been there in history. It has always been a cultural phenomenon, be it like from wearing kilts to like gods, goddesses, mythology, etc. But I think somewhere down the line, we have, as humans, I mean, we have really lost touch where I guess you are not really becoming more inclusive because, I mean, with a new generation comes new thought processes, and it's so important to listen to them and to be able to accept that as a new normal, and then only becomes like, I think, like a better place. So this is what we'll be talking about today, and that's gender fluid design. Next. What is beauty in blur? Like, I mean, the image here, it's a very, of course, a blurry image, and it's a reflection of a human. It could be two humans, one human. It could be not even a human. I mean, it could be anything. It's just a shadow. So why do we have to really define, like, no, please, in the same slide. So yeah, so why do we have to really define gender? It's a spectrum. And why do we have to really be, okay, this is this and this is it? We need to be disruptive, as I said before, and that's about going out of the box and being very curious, I guess, you know. I think everything really roots down to its curiosity. Next slide. So what is curiosity? Curiosity is literally, I think, key to everything. And here I'm talking about design per se, because I think design is like energy, and its energy is actually, I think, even gender, in the sense like it is so fluid, it is so like you can mold it, you can shape it, you can redirect it, you can really, no, go back. Yeah, you can really shape it, redirect it, and really get into different perspectives of what curiosity is, because only when you're curious you'll be able to see it from a different eye, different perspective, different awareness, different kind of ideologies when you did not really know. Like here I've drawn, like, I guess it's, if you see it, those are lines, and it's a chair, a stool, and a table. So it is obviously a chair, stool, and table, but what if you would actually look at it and be like, why did we even name it a chair? Why did we name it a table? Why did we name it a stool? Why did we say that, okay, these are humans and like maybe cockroaches are not humans, you know? So in a sense, like this is all like a social construct. I think even in sociology, where sociologists really study about people, humans, human psychology, of what and how you've accumulated during your whole process of what has happened in your life, what has happened or is happening, etc. So it is very important to be curious. So when I look at it, it could even be a human. Maybe it could be like these lines out here in the presentation. It could be humans. It could be humans. Maybe a person who is falling, a person who is jumping, a person who could be on air. So it need not, and we need not really define anything. And I think it is that particular beauty when it's about blending the blur. Okay, the next slide. So why I talk about inspiration? So I talk about the 3 I's always, and that is inspiration, imagination, and innovation. So why curiosity is like so important. I think like if no one had really been like, okay, maybe, you know, like I like this more and I think I like that more, or maybe I'm more towards my feminine energy or more towards my male energy. Why? I mean, if we were not curious and if we were not aware about what we were actually becoming or what we were going through, then I don't think there would ever have been this conversation about gender fluidity at all. So it is very important because that is itself an inspiration. Okay, next. Now with inspiration, and like, you know, I mean, go back to the first slide. Sorry, yeah. So, you know, the line is a heartbeat, because I think inspiration has to come from the heart. It has to be there inside you and you will know it. And that is what it is. Next. So when we come to imagination, next slide. Yeah, when we come to imagination, the line which you see is your brain. In a sense, like only when you are inspired and you are like, you know, you are curious and aware and you are so in link and in love with what you thought about, is then your imagination will go wild, where your imagination will go out of the box, imagination will become disruptive. And that is so necessary, because only then you will act on it. It's something like Margaret Thatcher or Gandhi would say, like about how your thoughts become actions and your actions become words, and words become your actions, and then actions become your character or what you want it to be, your choice. And that is so important, and that is where imagination comes through. Next slide. So innovation. So the 3rd I is innovation, because with inspiration and imagination comes innovation. Now, when I look at it back, you know, imagination, innovation, and they are all correlated. All 3 are correlated. If you have innovated or someone has innovated something different, be it, maybe a person who's just, I think, maybe studied how a water droplet falls on a table. Unless and until we actually knew that, I mean, who would have thought that such a minute, tiny millisecond, like a thought or a process could be captured and learned and really go into the micro details. And so that would lead into inspiration and imagination as well. So innovation does happen when all these 3 collide. And I think there is no place where this would not happen otherwise. Next. So embedded embryo. So why I talk about embedded embryo is because of one reason, and that is how I was saying curiosity, how I was saying imagination. It's very similar to how a child is born, like a child is born in your mind, you know. So similarly, even with gender and gender neutrality, what happens is, I guess, like you would obviously never really already know that you would be this, you know, or you would be that. Of course, your sex is confirmed, but the thing is that you would not really realize or know. And I think that's what the beauty about, I think, Gen Z and being more aware about what is going on right now, because more and more parents, more and more people, more and more societies are really going to it inclusivity of not even really getting, even if it's your maybe a baby shower or like a baby is born, everyone like right now, I think, is just going for gender neutral clothes because they want that particular human to be able to define it for themselves, to go through the processes and really learn and unlearn and forge their own tools or own ways, own journey towards discovery. And that is very similar to even design. Like a design is like an embryo in your mind. Next. Yeah. So I talk about a dot, a line, a shape, a form. Like similarly, how an embryo is like a small, tiny, let's say it's embedded. I mean, it's underdeveloped. And it's similar to that, you know. So how a dot, like I think this is what we've learned in colleges. I mean, it's elements of design, literally, I think, and that is the core essence of anything, be it, I mean, it's just dot and lines. And I think, I'm sure like everyone has done that assignment on EOD, which was to express emotions, to express thoughts, processes with just lines and dots. And little did I know then, looking back, I've realized that that is in essence what design is, because only then and only then when a line or when a dot is gone through curiosity and gone through your own process, you will find a shape, you will find a form, you will find what you're looking for. And that is so important. Next. I would like to give a little like preview on design process, in the sense like I believe that there are like four major constituents on design, and which I think is something which I learned over the years. And the first one is physical. So I'm going to give an example, which I always do, and that's an orange. So an orange is something so it's an orange. So an orange, when you look at it physically, you know, it's round in color, it may be green, it's maybe orange in color, it may be like even a little bit of both, and it would have many elements to it. And there was these kidney shaped inside, there are these fibrous roots, which is on an orange, fibrous structures, I guess, and the texture, and then the seeds would have the inside lining and the covering. So when I talk about, I guess, design here, I'm trying to talk about how you need not really like as a designer, I mean, I do not think about who is it supposed to be worn by, you know. I mean, I think about what is it at hand, and in the sense like what are you truly inspired by, and that really goes into your thought process and conceptualizing what can come out, and you would not really know what will. Next. So similarly, an orange could be even emotional, and that is, was it an orange which you were maybe given on an empty stomach and you did not have any money to even buy your meal when you were maybe in college, when everyone would get stuff, and maybe like your friend actually offered you that orange, and was that very special to you? Did you feel so did you feel not did you feel like guilty? Did you feel like, oh my god, I need to do something? Did you feel like, oh my god, that was such a humble and nice way of sharing things? Or was it small incidents where maybe you were young and you were running away from a farmer, and you like really stole some oranges from a tree, and you were really going, you know, and an old person was really after you, after your life, because you took away his fodder. So the thing is that, I mean, this also would have its own connotation, because when I say physical, everyone in the world would think, yes, of course, like an orange, what is an orange? Like the more and more micro you go to it, obviously, maybe you can even go towards an under microscope, but still it's physical in nature and anyone can get that. But what is very personal and very emotional is something very close to you. It's something which is very, only you would have experienced, or it could be that particular moment, that zone. It's like a painting, one stroke and it's actually saved. And that's, I think, a value which a memory can have. Next. And orange induced, in the sense like it could even be another thing where you would maybe take an orange, it's not an experience here, but it's more like you are inducing yourself to experience it. So maybe you want that orange to look black, so you would actually maybe take an orange and then inject it with black ink, and then see what it is, but still it's again comes under physical, but still it's induced because you're making yourself get into that particular process of design, to get into it and then do it and then observe. So it's all about awareness and curiosity. What will happen when I do this? What if an orange is not an orange? Next. An orange in research. So this is your fourth design ideology, I guess, where an orange, maybe you could actually just search about an orange and you would realize that orange is like a house in Switzerland, and it's maybe yellow in color. So it's not an orange anymore, it's yellow in color, and it's a house, and it is a very structured design. So it could be that, and this could also become what an orange is. Next. So why I was going through these things is like, to kind of give you an overview of what I as a designer go through my design process and be like, and that itself is, I think, fluid in nature, because it is about believing in the processes of what you're doing. And it's about how from everything, something will come out. Yeah, be it, I'm not just talking about, of course, fashion. I mean, it could be architecture, it could be like interiors, it could be science, it could be biology, it could be so many other things. But it is about, I think, being able to blend or blur those lines and really understand where you're coming from and what and how you're being aware about something at hand. Yeah, what is non-conformity? In a sense, like, I think more and more, so like as a designer, I think I've also realized that the more and more people, individuals, like the whole revolution, Tanushi was talking about, more and more individuals get more attached, more towards this genre of non-conformity with identity. I think, today you are this, maybe tomorrow you are something else. And I think it is so important because, of course, like, it also goes towards understanding what and who you are, like, in a whole process as in your life. So that's very important. Okay, next. Again, I have the embryo picture because of the fact that it is very much like my design process are very much like, how I mentioned earlier, like how an embryo is. So when it's an embryo, you would really not know the gender, and somehow, even in my design process, till the garment at hand is made, like my whole process is done and the garment at hand is made, till then, you would not really know what you are making or who are you making it for, because you are so engrossed towards creating that particular design, that particular outfit, for me, like fashion. So that particular clothing item. And when you're doing that, your whole concentration is that, and it's like actually creating a baby, because only after the baby is there, then you would, when that particular baby goes to another, or like it gets picked up or goes through another human, then only it would actually realize what identity it would actually have. So it is very much, next slide, it is very much like water. It is fixation of fluidity. It's, my garments are like water. It takes the shape of the wearer, and it's about, next slide. So it is about how you, next. Yeah, so it is about how it takes the shape of a container, just like the water. It does not matter what shape, what size, what gender, class, whatever you are, like, it does not really matter, because I think it is all about being aware. And if you really love something, you would be able to, like, make it a part of you, like your personality, and it would be a part of your wardrobe, when I talk about fashion per se. And that would lead towards being the new normal. And this is like so important because of one more reason, and that is, for everything, I think there is a questioning, questioning it, curiosity, and questioning things. And then you really get into understanding it. And when you're trying to understand things, there will be a mess. There will be a very, I mean, you know, like people would be like questioning what is going on, or you would also be a little, I guess, in a difficult situation where you're figuring things out. But that is so important, because only when you go through that mess situation, then you will realize and get into the clear. It's like you need to take that first step and, you know, dip your foot into water and let the ripple clear. And then, and only then, I mean, you know, you would really find yourself. And that is, I think, I mean, what I would like to close the presentation with. And that is to be curious and to be able to really understand, I don't know, and question everything that there is. Thank you.
Thank you so much there, Pella. That was a nice revisit to elements of design and then connecting it back to gender fluidity. Glad that NIFT Foundation program is still on with you. Thank you so much for that brilliant, brilliant presentation. Our next speaker is Mr. Subhashish Mandal, and it's my pleasure to introduce him as an architect by profession and a true blue designer by passion. As the design director with Gensler, he explores the concept of a truly versatile.
I seem to have lost the sound.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
All right. As design director with Gensler, he explores the concept of a truly versatile design space. And as a social media influencer and a fashion enthusiast, he brings in his vast experience in the field of design to make astute and interesting observations on the changing nomenclature of fashion. Watch out for his range of cool menswear accessories on his Insta handle, which is called Eagle. It's indeed a pleasure to have you here and to hear him speak this evening. Over to you, Mr. Subhashish.
Hello, Nitya. Hello, everyone. Prasad, it's good to see you again.
Hi, Subhashish.
Would you be sharing your screen or you'd be
yeah,
sharing
can you share the screen, please? I think it'll just be fine if you do.
All right.
Yeah. While we're just starting with that, I think so many people have spoken about so many interesting things. I think I love Bella's expression of reinterpretation and understanding when Ritu began her storytelling and talking about, like, you know, and then Prasad's understanding on design, which is, of course, extremely vast. And there's so much to be, I think my world is a little away in some senses. And I think my journey has also been slightly different in that connotation. So just to kind of take you a little back, I will take you a little bit through. Could you fit it on the screen, please? I think
yes, we'll do that right. Yeah.
No, it's still not. It's still not on the fitted screen. Yeah, I think there's more text. Anyway, I think a lot of this has to actually do with who I am as well. And like many other, and I can say this as a gay man. Sorry, can you just stay on that slide, please? As a gay man and a designer who's been out for many, many years in his workspace, it's not been an easy time. I grew up battling a lot of identity crisis. I'm not young. I came out of the closet in 1990. It was not an easy time for me. And what had really happened was who I was then, and I have, of course, you know, kind of changed across time, not because society asked me to, but just I think you tend to travel across time and become a different person in your own way. And I think in gender fluid, a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about will be a little bit more personal as a journey to me. And it began with embracing, and I was quite, I grew up as quite a young, effeminate man. And I was very badly teased when I was studying. And I wasn't, it was not a good time for me when I was studying my years of architecture. I went through a lot of society pressure and issues. But I think that's also makes you who you are. And I think the idea of fluidity and understanding and embracing all of that, and what everyone's already spoken about, is really has to do, and how that defines back in design has to do with acceptance, also the understanding of individuality and who you want to become, because you are more than, we are all more than one person, and we all have been in different ways, whether it is who we are when we were younger, who we are with our partners, who we are with our families, who we are with our friends. And I think a lot of that, there's a lot of up and down that keeps happening, and that's quite interesting. And I think that the idea of non-conforming, and that idea of non-conforming is also varied across different people. Next slide, please. I have the pleasure of knowing some of the people on this slide. Not Ranveer, unfortunately, but Himanshu, who is known as the Sari Man, is someone I've had long conversations with. I knew him before he became the Sari Man. Himanshu is the person who's in the center, and the bald man, just like me. And then Maya, who's a drag queen, Durga, then Zishan, who's on the top right-hand side. And this whole idea of becoming versus who we are, any of us. There are people who are musicians on this panel. There are people who are choreographers on this panel. There are people who are teachers and, who have come from various different backgrounds. And they all have different society backgrounds as well. And I think that who they become also becomes who they are eventually, if they are brave enough to do so. And I think when you're trying to explore the idea of gender fluidity, that is one of the most important tasks that you have to look at. And when you can do that in your mind and in your soul, is also when you can apply it to something that you do, which is exactly what Bella also said, that if you feel that and if you embrace it, it is who you eventually become, therefore you express. Next slide, please. These are just some quick conversations, and that I will just kind of mention on. And sorry, just, yeah. So gender fluid, Lee Luxon said, gender fluid is much more than a saying. I want to play up my femininity traits that I have, or that I want to play up the masculine traits that I have. It's an actual physical, mental, and for me, emotional shift in how I interact with the world, which is exactly what I just said in the slide before, because that is a manifestation of who you think and who you therefore become. In fashion, Ren Sanders said this in Vogue, the first thing that becomes clear that we need to distinguish gender fluid fashion from what is often called gender neutral, androgynous, or unisex. Some of these things are what Prasad was referring to when he talked about all these wonderful designers who are creating these palettes and ideas. While the latter aims to disrupt established norms through dull, billowing garments to transcend skirts and suits, the former strives towards the same goal by disentangling the normative association. And I think that is somewhere where a lot of this fluidity starts coming in, because you're moving away from what is an association that is generally considered usual. And finally, Urza Miller, who I greatly admire. Gender itself is not an enemy and will never really be over, because it is a vital aspect of existence. But if you want it, we can see it in a world which we liberated from the bonds of it and nourished by the joys and beauty of it. The point then is not to act as if gender doesn't exist, but rather to reorient ourselves towards embracing the myriad and beautiful ways in which it does. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about interior design and conversations that I've had with clients across the time when I've done different kinds of projects, and versus what is really masculine versus feminine. Surprisingly, as soon as I would say that, like, let's use the idea of florals and pinks and like using the idea of a certain amount of shine, it starts saying, oh, I feel that that's too feminine for me. I don't think I can do that. And then the idea of grays and charcoals and the idea of something which is much more monochromatic, for the lack of a better word, is something that is much more masculine and therefore comfortable. And that is something now I think people tend to play up with, because also there's a much larger level of the use of art and installation that defines people by who they are and what they choose to put up in their homes. And that also changes the way masculine and feminine is often looked at when you look at just interior design. And it's interesting that these conversations do happen even now. But yes, things are changing, as you will see as we go ahead. Next slide, please. Some of these visuals have already popped up. If you look at Rasil, you look at Ashish Shah, you look at Siddharth Teitler, and you look at Purusha, who are all changing the idea of what local really is endeavored as. And that change, the local, is established in various different ways, which I just kind of go to. But whether it may be interiors or it may be a piece of furniture, whether it's a silhouette, whether it's a print, whether it's a garment, whether it's the reinterpretation of what a garment was, like a veshti is or what a sherwani is. And some of this also came up in the reinterpretation of garments, which you saw earlier on Prasad's slides, where you kind of really saying that how is this, and many of it is what Ritu also said, like because it's there historically in things that we have done and what people have always worn. But suddenly now we are going back to say, oh, I want to try that. But how much of it is relevant to a person versus a larger trend versus, say, people who are not wanting to be fluid per se is really the ask. And that comes much more on a personal level. Next slide. So a couple of quick slides, and I won't take too much time on this. Again, Ashish Gupta, 145 East, nor black nor white, Bobo, Calcutta. Brands that I have known. I worked with 145 East and Bobo before. And I think that this kaleidoscope and this rainbow freedom of textile, the understanding of print, the understanding of this vividness of what it could be is also something that a lot of people say, oh, is this gender fluid? Is this the rainbow pattern? Because I want to be colorful in the LGBTQIA with all the initials. Is this something that I want to be? I love color myself, and it is something that I use in a lot of my projects. And I believe that it's something that I resonate with. But does that make me gender fluid? Perhaps to some person, to some people, perhaps not. Like, you know, in the world of fashion, I think the boundaries are much less blurred as compared to when you do interiors and architecture, because there the lines are much more difficult to navigate when you kind of look at what a space is, because it's something that you stay with and you kind of understand that that is something that you have to be with. So people who navigate that in those kind of realms and say that, oh, this is masculine, feminine, or say fluid, it could be people on this panel may say that, oh, this is fine. I don't think this is fluid at all. But I would know people and clients who would say this is very fluid, and we feel that this is kind of crossing over for good or for worse. They may accept it or they may not accept it. And I think those are interesting conversations to have, because you're kind of seeing what is that normative association of what someone is really used to. Next slide, please. Silhouettes, the freedom of shape, we've talked about this as well. I think you see some of these wonderful shapes. Again, this has been discussed in some of the presentations before, the idea of drape. And some of these people are doing fantastic work. I think Anam, Antar Agni, Amit Agarwal, Purushu, Pot Plant, they're all doing this really, really fantastic work. And the fact that these silhouettes, and if you see how many more men, when we say men, I would say people who would not consider themselves per se fluid are willing to wear something that is much more softly draped around their bodies and say that, oh, this is fine because this is something that I really believe in. And I think those are interesting. That's an interesting thing, because people are suddenly saying that these are the lines of control that I can live with, and this is where I am fluid per se. And that's it. And the designers who are working in all of this, especially people who've kind of made them in ways that is more widely acceptable, I think that they are already helping in understanding of fluidity and kind of taking people and having a wider dimension of their understanding. Next slide, please. Bling, the freedom to shine. If you look at some of these designers, we all know that they work very extensively with a lot of work which is to do with shine and with glitter. Manish, Rinzin, Amit, Sabyasachi. The Elysian Home and I have worked on a couple of campaigns together, which is the second image from the left. And recently I did these, I'm doing, I have to post some of it yet, but this very, very largely sequin jacket. And then when I showed it to a couple of my friends, they said, "Oh, this is amazing. I mean, I would totally wear this. If I went to an occasion like that, I may not wear that much, but I think sequins are something that I could pull off." The idea of fabrics and the kind of these textiles that are kind of crossing over is something a few years ago people would not do. And I'm speaking strictly from a perspective when I've looked at male male influencers, my friends, not people generally from the community, but outside the community. And they are all willing to kind of, cross over and say, this is something that I would definitely do. And it's interesting to see that. Next slide, please. When you look at the idea, and this was a huge movement in interior design a few years ago, well, I'd say almost like a decade back now, probably a little bit more, but kitsch became very, very important in graphic design and also in interior design. There were designers who were really kind of like popping out all the prints, kind of doing these very vivid explorations of color, and then they were kind of bringing all of that in and pattern. And if you see a lot of the park hotels, actually, there are very large sections of the park which are actually quite kitsch. When you look at them today, they don't seem like they would work, but it was something that was very, very popular back then. And there are people in interior design who really believe that this is something that they resonate with, because color is a large important part of their life. They may scale it down or scale it up, but it's something that does work. And again, I think it relates back to this idea of normative and crossing over the fluid boundaries. Next slide, please. Done by AKFT, Ayush Kasliwal for the Narendra Bhavan in Bikaner. The color fluidity, if you see here, is, I think, quite stark. I mean, the idea of the red piano, the strong teals, the patterns, the kind of superimposition of various ideas of how do we look at, something that is old versus something that is new, which is contemporary. Especially in interior design, there are a lot of interiors, especially in hospitality and retail, that you will see that have looked at this kind of understanding. And it is because so many more people, if you can go on to the next slide as we keep going, is something that people are really looking at. The image on the extreme right-hand side is actually, sorry, but it is, it's this, the entire store is kind of done with this very large amount of gold. And like even in interiors now, if you look at just the idea of bling and the idea of how shine and glitter, in terms of whether you're using chandeliers or you're using sequin fabrics, the idea of reflective metals, and is really becoming a large part of interior design, even as an accent. And I think these are all already challenging the ideas, and they could be trends which will stay within. Somebody might go all the way with it, like on the extreme right, or somebody might be quite conservative, like on the extreme left, where, just the chair is that pop. But when you look at that chair, the person who's put that chair in is already challenging, he or she, the designer, is already challenging the idea of fluidity, of accepting these various different norms of something that can happen in that space. Go ahead, please. I'll quickly go ahead. The idea of print, again, you look at the Art Deco movement, you look at block print, you look at textiles, you look at, I mean, people are really resonating with a lot of this. Next slide. So the journey of questions and understanding a little bit about my expression of how all this has impacted me, how my youth impacted me. Next slide. And how that kind of becomes who I am today. So as an interior design architect, as a lifestyle fashion influencer, a promoter of handloom and handicrafts in all my projects, and as an out gay man. So the fluid of my gender is actually defined by a lot of this. And then it comes from silhouettes that I wear. Silhouettes, I mean, the idea of the patterns that I would kind of create and talk about. And when I do this, some of these patterns are you would see them in fashion, and when people see them, they say, I could do this. For example, the flared pants are done by Rajesh Pratap for men. It's not a woman's trouser. The kimono the kimono jacket is something that is unisex. The choga, which is on the extreme left-hand side, is something that is truly traditional. And you've seen people wearing this, but you will see a lot of wedding outfits now have the choga, which is the man's skirt, which is definitely taking you on that journey already. And those are interesting things to see. And when it starts going into my work, like whatever I just told you, working with a lot of local brands, the idea of vivid colors, kind of bringing a balance between, and I design offices now. I don't really design homes. The image on the extreme right is from my living room. But if you look at the images on the left, those are actually proper work offices for corporate clients, where we've been able to have that dialogue with them, and they've wanted to have that dialogue to say, let us bring all this in and let us celebrate the idea of color and festivity. And a lot of that goes back into the idea of what can become fluid in terms of design, because I believe in that, and therefore I would like to share and propagate that with people that I work with. Next slide. We're almost done. Again, the idea of graphic design, vivid prints, the idea of how you kind of superimpose them across in projects, how the storytelling is kind of worked out. Next slide. And then just like, how color, pattern, being bold, like for example, even if you look at the numbering of these rooms, just the idea of being bold and standing out. And then I think all of that kind of goes back in the way I kind of feel and resonate personally on my own level, and then bring all of that forte into something which can be quite normally, if you look at these Rangoli prints with all these truck inspired graphics, and then the idea of the local furniture and the patterns, and a lot of corporates are now embracing all of this. So I think that for me has been the implication of the understanding of the fluid journey. And finally, just to say that I'd like to thank you and cheers to becoming whoever you need to be, because that is really the idea of fluidity and embracing the gender that you want to be, whatever that gender. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Subhashish. Really breaking up gender fluidity into pattern, color, bling fluidity, texture fluidity, and that wonderful note on realization of your own self. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Our next speaker for this evening is Ms. Deepa Suryaprakash, who would like to call herself an architect, a researcher, an educator, and a learner with the aim of designing sustainability and life sciences. In her architecture practice, which is called Between Lines, she focuses on liminal space between design disciplines, leading us to cross-disciplinary pursuits. She believes, and I quote, "We are a matter of universe, and universe is a matter of us." We look forward to hear you talk on gender fluid design space today. Over to you, Ms. Deepa, and your presentation is up.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I was really feeling like a fish out of water. Thank you, Mr. Subhashish. I think he set a wonderful tone for me. Thank you for my introduction too.
93029.
Hi. So I'll jump right in. I'm an architect, and I'm an incidental retail and interior designer. I say this because 5 years before, I wouldn't have believed that I'd have a body of work in retail design, let alone in the area of textiles. I really enjoy the freedom and the autonomy that is there in interior design prospect. And I have a theory background, so I usually like to apply allegorical approach to the design.
I'm sorry to interrupt you for a second. May I request the audience to kindly mute themselves, please?
The embroideries and everything is
Audience, request you to please mute yourself.
we will obviously get it done finished once your fitting is done. So for right now, you tell me a fitting point, and the rest I will take care of it.
I think we can continue. Yes.
All right. So yeah, so I hope that explains the title and also sets the tone for the presentation. I work and design for, in short, handloom sector. And my clients are anywhere from government-run cooperative societies to enthusiastic individuals to giants in the industry. But the common factor is that and I find it extremely interesting that from the product level, from the making end, there is already fluidity that is there. Are you guys able to hear me well?
Yes, you were clear.
Yeah, so I'm just going to turn the video off so that there is no interruption. I find it extremely interesting that from the maker's end, this happens in the houses of weavers where men and women are equally invested in the making end. And I am seeing the gender fluidity slightly differently here. Thanks to the previous wonderful presentation, much ground has been covered from the individual identity and fashion level, which I'm obviously alien to, and I would like to dwell on my forte, which is the space design. So I also find it really interesting that in my for the clientele I work for, the customers also come in with an already accepted level of fluidity because the shopping experience is unique. It has a huge cultural significance, and it also has a festive memory association because the shopping of these textiles are done for milestone occasions of life. From the product end, it becomes really easy for me to work in this fluid space. Moving on, I'm trying to introduce some of the people behind the brand I worked for. Top image is the production team of the brand Hands of India, my first boutique design. And they operate from this Templetown, Vrindavan at UP. And husband and wife or full families are involved in production. They also double as models for their apparels that they make. And the bottom left image is of MD of Cooptex and also all the intellectuals, influencers, and engineers behind the facelift of brand Cooptex. And of course, the right image shows the third generation business savvy leads of the brand Nalli. These people's vision and young designers, from the likes of NIFT and NID, they have a phenomenal e-space presence. And they've also built a successful e-commerce space, right? And move on to the physical spaces here in for a rude shock. This is the image of Cooptex Goa that we took before we took up renovation there. And this may as well become the representative image of all Cooptex across India. These spaces are usually crammed and overstocked, understructured, dingy, and it's a surveillance nightmare. And generally, there is no sense of brand identity too. So I'm not working with a high-end, highbrow brand here, but a brand which is absolutely popular among the subjects of the country, and yet it is in this state. So when this opportunity came up, I really lapped it up because it's a brand that's close to my heart too. And we had a series of showrooms that were lined up for the renovation process. So for us, from the design philosophy, like I mentioned, I have a theory background, so I usually try to build narratives over the design process. It helps me to simplify the whole process in my head. And so when we weigh out the product and the space that we design for display and sale, the value of product here obviously outweighs the quality of space. So we went back to the product origin. We did a lot of study and understood who are the weavers, what are the motives, why is it specific to the region, and how it is celebrated. Like I said, there may be more saris coming out, but with the breadth of patterns that is available, the weave that is possible, this whole act of buying this or utilizing this becomes a sort of a gender neutral activity. Here is and sort of a sample floor plans of some of the showrooms I've gotten to work in. They come in all sizes, all shapes and areas. And so it became initially a little daunting to see how to sort of bind them together. And they are sometimes in the central business district, sometimes in the high streets, and sometimes in the main road that leads to a temple gopuram in a second-tier city, in the middle of Tamil Nadu or anywhere else. So the context that each of these places were in were also extremely interesting. And we somehow had to create this microcosm within. So, like I said, when there's an overwhelming exercise put across to us by training, I think we try to break it down, with an allegorical approach. And that's what we've done here. Like I've also established earlier, the spaces are usually single floor. So unlike multi-brand stores, it is not divided as, men and women section. Rather, it's broken by the price or the kind, or the occasion in which it is worn. So it already sort of changes the equation in which the way you split spaces and think about strategically sort of sorting out the display. So we've adapted a few strategies, and I will present it in the following slides. The first one, so you can see that the cave is usually sort of left to the impermeable wall. And it is done so that maximum stocking can happen in these walls. They are also the place where maximum sale happens. The client is given one-on-one attention. There's usually a salesperson put on, and that is the ultimate place where the business happens. Therefore, the entire purpose or objective of the store itself is to draw the crowd securely to this cave end. Is my voice blue? Hello?
Deepa,
Right now, it's a little unclear.
Yeah, we're not able to hear you very clear. Hello? Hello, Deepa, we are not able to hear you. We seem to have a little technical issue here. So just give us a minute. We seem to have lost Deepa on the connection. So I think we'll have to...
I think I'm back here. I'm back here. Can I share again? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
Sorry,
Deepa,
I hope this stays on. Yeah.
A little bit because we are running a little short of time.
Yeah. Mine is a very short presentation. Do not worry. So this is one example of the cave model where, like I explained, the walls are piled up with the shelves, and then you have the table that sort of separates the product from the customer. And this is sacrosanct. We could not break this module with traditionally how the sale happens in this zone. And here's another example at Nully Dress Materials, where we connected the periphery wall and the columns and created these sub-stores or niches where there's a little more sort of empowerment given to the customer because there's a floating island and people can move freely. And the material becomes a little more tactile, and the choice is also open for the customer. There's another third option where a long footprint is broken, and then the in-between column is taken as a support to create this cave-like structure. There's no price for guessing what goes in here. Obviously, the wedding trousseau, because that is the highlight of these stores. The second strategy that I want to talk about the work So the river, the fluid element which we use to sort of break space or compartmentalize the space and give a sense of direction and divide it without rigidly doing so. And the river allows for meandering and it allows for casual shopping. And it also sort of contrasts the robust nature of the cave. And the river could happen in the ceiling, floor, and when there is a space constraint, it could also happen in the furniture level. So here's an example at the Co-optics Egmore headquarters, where we took the handloom logo and then ran it as a pattern on the ceiling. This is a wide, stout footprint where crisscrossing across the columns was a possibility, and this becomes a guideline. The river sort of guides you subtly to walk across freely. Here's another example at the Nully dress material, where both at the floor and the ceiling, we divided this really boxy, footprint and positioned the caves on the right side, safely tucked in. And the river is the one which connects the facade from the entrance, to the staircase where you enter. Another example where when we did not have the spatial possibility, the furniture or the running table itself has that visual cue to sort of read, run your eye level across the store and understand how the configuration works. To the right side example shows how this river could also stem from a vertical surface and travel onto the horizontal surface and, making the cave, becoming a highlight for the cave. The third strategy, which is my favorite, we are calling it the beach. So the beach essentially does not keep you in the core activity that is shopping. Instead, it allows you to pause, it allows you to observe, and it also allows you to be absorbed. The facade is often part of the beach, and then there are the structural walls, which are converted into mirror panels or graphic panels. We often include infographics because personally, as designers, we are fascinated about the wealth of information that is available about handloom and weaving industry in general. We also place ancillary objects in the beach zone so that when, like I mentioned, when a family is shopping, there could be primary shoppers and then there are people who are just hanging around, and it still keeps them invested in the experience of the space. Here's an example of a beach scenario. This is in Handloom Cafe at Chennai, where we dedicated the walls for different facets of the trade, and this is for the people. And one could, pause and understand the statistics about the Tamil Nadu weavers. Here's another one. This is the boutique we designed in Jayanagar for Hands of India. Here, the beach and the river idea sort of merges together because this red wall that you see from the entrance to the end of the boutique, where a motif of Rangoli, which is part of the brand identity, is running. And we also place these sort of panels which explains the story of the brand or the evolution of the brand. So while shopping is happening on either side of the spine or the river, some amount of infographics also going over. So we also recently included another dimension to the beach format, where outside of infographics, we saw that we could engage works of art. This is at the landing between two floors of Nully. So we engaged an artist to talk about the story of the loom. So when you cross from one zone to the other, you are also sort of absorbed by this art, which is, all consuming. And we also are looking at beach as a place where you sort of, pause and take selfies. You're celebrating the space. You're celebrating that whole ritual that you came to the store for a particular occasion, shopping, so on and so forth. The final strategy is something which is more of a tool and less of a strategy. So all of that analogies that I spoke about, which allows the space to become fluid, sort of justifies the product, highlights the value of the product, welcomes all customers, And the beauty about the handloom industry, I feel, is that the more I've been working with it, it really doesn't matter who you are, but there is something that is available for everybody, and for every occasion. So in that sense, I related back to many of the speakers' allusion to the traditional idea where things were so wide that you could make the choices and you can decide who you want to be at what day and what point. And you didn't have to stick to a certain kind of identity. That's my 2 cents about gender fluidity from the individual level. But going back to the spatial strategy, so without the grid, none of this manipulation is possible. So all designers out there know that grid is this omnipresent and omnipotent tool that we all use. So I see that this invisible mesh allows us to sort of work in the form, create fluidity, create closure, create openness, and whatnot. So I'd like to close the presentation with a quote from one of my favorite architects, Rem Koolhaas. The grid is above all a conceptual speculation in its apparent neutrality and indifference to topography or to what exists. It claims the superiority of mental construction over reality. I hope I convincingly spoke about how fluid spaces can be created. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Deepa. That was gender fluid design for not just what you shop, but probably also where you shop. Thank you so much for that lovely presentation. So we reached the last speaker for today, last but certainly not the least, Mr. Param Sahib Singh, who is a graduate from NIFT Bangalore Fashion Design Department. He calls himself an escapist designer, someone who loves color and everything larger than life. Param likes to bring his rich and colorful forte for design, his experiences with leading fashion houses such as Manish Arora's, helping him build a fun and quirky brand aesthetic. He's also an avid blogger. You can find him as Param Banana, with his content ranging from sometimes meticulous, complete with research and ideation, to a string of complete. Lovely to have you back. Bangalore, Param, over to you.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you for joining and thank you for staying over. So I will just run through you, and I will not take a lot of time of yours, and I will run through you with a lot of with just a small flow of whatever my work and my genre has been of work. So with the slide one, these are the unisex t-shirts. You know, like with my brand, I don't think we conform to any gender and specific in terms of design and colors. So we try and be very non-conforming and fluid with our prints, embroideries, with textures, with surfaces, textile, everything. So we'll start with slide one, which is like a generic unisex shirts where we have done these crazy prints. Moving on.
You are on mute right now, Param.
Param, I think we are not able to hear you. I think you've gone.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we are
Yes,
okay.
yes, we can. Yes.
Oh, so you did not hear anything?
No, we heard the first slide, and after that, I think it was actually.
Oh, great. Okay. And the second, okay, moving on to the second slide, there was this association with Vans India. So where we created all these crazy graphics for them, and all these are hand painted by local artisans in Delhi. A few of them, like the lion one, was done by me, and the rest were handcrafted with like some local artisans where I carefully work with them in Delhi. So this was my association with Van India, and these are all our like unisex prints. The third is this face mask. You know, I do a lot of DIY projects at home. I think quarantine was a great time for us to explore. So I use all the stuff, the material, whatever we use in our office to create all these 3D textures and 3D masks. So the left one is my mom. So I try to do it on her, and the right one is me, of course. So I think that's what we did with all the DIY projects at home, which is again a very gender fluid product. Okay, and fourth one, this was again a tie-up with Adidas, where I had to create like this, some shoes in my style. So again, we did like these Aztec-inspired pattern, which was very tribal, and then we incorporated all these elements of hearts and all these things. So again, like this was open for men and women for both to order. Next, I think we'll move ahead. Okay, so this one was my association with Dandelion India, where we did like some we introduced a loungewear for men and women both, where we kind of did fluid prints, which would work both for men and women, and they can swap and they can choose whatever they want to do. So we did like blues and pinks and yellows and greens for men and women both who want to go a little crazy and explore beyond it. This was one print, and then in the next slide you will see the other king and queen print also, where we were open towards like mixing and matching, and also we shot in a way that it looks more fluid. It's not necessarily for men and women. Anyone is open to choosing the prints. Should we move ahead?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah. So I spoke about. Okay. Yeah. So again, these jackets are a part of my Indian wear line, where we do all these embroidered jackets. Again, we have styled them on how the stylist Sanam Ratansi, she's Bollywood's famous stylist. She has styled it on her own, and how the same jacket can be worn by men, and how they can team it up and make it look formal. So again, a versatile piece. Yeah, this was one of my initial blogging days, where I kind of styled this really gray model, and he was open to doing something really quirky and really like crazy. So we did a lot of bangles for him, a lot of rings and printed pants. So I think the approach was very metrosexual for him. Again, talking about headgears here, I think headgears is something that I associate personally to like non-conforming. So here is me. I think this was a part of the editorial with the magazine where I was wearing this headgear. Again, here's silhouettes. I chose to wear stockings here, which is again only limited to women's wear option. So we kind of played it and did some experiment to break those norms and, like break the classification here. This was also for a magazine. Oh yeah, this is my favorite. So this was my association with Papa Don't Preach. So I did like these accessories and headgears and glasses for them. Again, I have seen these headgears being worn on men and women. I think I've seen bridegrooms ordering these headgears for their mehndi and cocktail parties. So for me, it was quite a breaking stereotype kind of a thing. And here you see all these glasses, which we are doing again for men and women both. So again, a very gender neutral product. I don't know, I'm not able to move this. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so here you see all these embroidered products, the sunglasses where we have shot it on a female, and then it was recently shot on an Ishan cutter for GQ. So again, like the approach is very like, like these fun products, and like there's a great scope for crazy accessories in India and you don't get it. So I think we kind of fill that gap. And for me, it's always fun to, why not men, pink, why not pink for men? So that question is always there. So we kind of always break it. Again, extended line of the accessories. This is also one of my favorite printed shirts. I think we started doing these in lockdown, and it kind of took to another level where I saw an upsurge of men's wanting to order these funky shirts. And for me, it was quite a shocker and kind of a revelation that, my God, like in India, men are so experimental and they're moving ahead with those things. And like female, they wanted to go for more boxy silhouettes. So I think we are on the right path of gender fluid and non-conforming the boundaries. Coming to my favorite artworks. So I think I do a lot of artworks inspired by my own physical characteristics, where I take all these sick characters and he's on his own journey of experiencing his daily LGBTQIA reactions, and how the society reacts to men wearing lipsticks, men choosing bolder prints, men wanting to explore themselves, wearing a certain color, wearing a certain kind of garment. So I think this illustration talks about like a man wanting to wear makeup and express himself. This artwork was basically this queer wedding where we kind of are hoping for to legalize the same-sex marriage in India. This was kind of a representation of an Indian stamp, and on the stamp we have put a member of the transgender community, and they become the national symbol. So that was the idea behind the artwork. Again, this was one of those my illustrations where I've kind of represented a goddess in a male form, where all he's wearing the jewelry and the heart and the extra hands. So kind of an adaptive thing, but I kind of made it into a meme, made into a light-hearted meme. And this was my journey from, I think, from the recent Mintra Fashion Superstar, where I got to explore a lot of my individual style. And I kind of and I consciously made an effort to break the norms of what men should wear. So for each episode, I kind of experimented, and it did stand out a lot. And last was this feature from Verve magazines. They wanted to cover like my sartorial style. So they did go for a lot of fur, a lot of heartful, which is considered an accessory for women. So we kind of broke those boundaries also and did like a crazy photo shoot. That's about it from me. Thank you for joining.
That was an explosion of color, Param. We always knew when you were a student at NIFC that you play with colors, but then using that to break the boundaries of design.
You're an amazing illustrator. Amazing work.
Thank you, Prasad. It's so good to hear from you.
Lovely. Really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
Param, this is Raji ma'am here.
Hi, Raji ma'am.
How are you?
Good.
I'm just not able to hold myself. Param, here.
I am currently
it's like really having goosebumps all over.
I am currently in my studio and I'm draping from HSP to Apex.
Oh my God, I'm sitting in the lab and watching this entire thing, Param.
That's so much fun.
This is happening as of now in our campus. Students are working.
Great.
And I was just recollecting your collection where we just had to stop you.
I know.
The colors in the design collection. My God, you are a bomb.
Such memories.
Yes.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you for letting us do all this.
Yes. Very happy to see you.
Raji ma'am, that was a nice one.
So thank you all very much. I'll take my leave now.
Thank you, everyone. Subhashi signing off as well. It was amazing to hear all these perspectives.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Param.
Take care. Hi.
Thank you, Prasad.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Bye-bye, Raji. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Prasad.
Thank you.
Nice seeing all of you all again.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Mohan sir. Hi, Ritu.
Bye, Susan. See you.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, Susan. Sorry.
I think.
I'll just step in for a bit and wrap this up before the final bye-byes are done. It's been a fabulous weekend wrap with this PechaKucha. And we chose this topic today because we wanted to stress on the fact that, we can all be more than what the society asks us to be or wants us to be. And there was nothing better than picking up androgyny and gender fluidity in design, because every design idea is also intensely political and intensely personal, as the conversations with Shubhashish and even the explosion of colors and the illustrations that Param has chosen to share with the audience today. On behalf of NIFT Bangalore, my heart overflows with gratitude and with the explosion of aesthetic and explosion of beauty on the screen and the lovely stories that you shared today for this evening. I hope these conversations, these chit-chats and these PechaKuchas keep going because we need to normalize, we need to blur the lines, and we need greater acceptance. And at this point of time, there's nothing better to sign off than to say that, what Bella had in her PowerPoint, which was to stay curious, open our hearts, and stay safe, because at this point of time, there is one little thing which is not making much of a differentiation between man and a woman, and that's the virus. And so primary responsibility to stay safe, all of you. And thank you for joining NIFT Bangalore on this Friday evening. Thank you all. This is us signing off for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Eloquently, and thank you to all the speakers as well for being part of such a lovely evening. We close for the day. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.